God bless you today, my friends. God bless you. Wherever you are, however you are, may the Lord give you great strength, especially if you're passing through a time of difficulty. If you are, let us know how to pray for you. We'll try to stand with you in this season of struggle. We'll be privileged to pray for you. Just post your prayer needs there, and you'll be remembered in the throne room of heaven. Do you have a few minutes? Can we discuss God's promise that is seen in the cross? People often ask me about the pronunciation of my last name. Is it Lucado or is it Lucado? Now, for the record, we say Lucado, but many have said it both ways. Confusion over the name has created some awkward and some humorous moments. One occurred when I visited one of our church members at his office many years ago. One of his co-workers spotted me, and she had been at our church and read a few of my books. "Max Lucado," she exclaimed as I walked into the office. "I've been wanting to meet you." Now, it seemed a bit rude to me to correct her before I'd even met her. So I just smiled. And I thought, well, that's probably going to be the end of it. We're going to go meet some other people. But it turns out that was just the beginning. She wanted me to meet a few friends. So down the hall we walked. And with each introduction came a mispronunciation. "Sally, come here. I want you to meet Max Lucado. Joe, do you have a minute? Say hello to Max Lucado. Bob, come over here. Max Lucado is here. I'd like you to meet him." So I would smile. I would cringe. I never could find a way to maneuver my way into the conversation to correct her. Besides, after a dozen times, there was no need in correcting her. We were beyond the point of no return. It would have simply been too embarrassing. So I just kept my mouth shut. But then I got caught. We finally met a fellow who beat her to the draw. "I'm glad to meet you," he said as we entered his office. "My wife and I visited your church services last Sunday, and we left trying to figure out how you say your name. Tell me, is it Lucado or is it Lucado?" Now, I was trapped. Tell the truth, she'll be embarrassed. Lie, he'll be misinformed. She needed mercy. He needed accuracy. I wanted to be kind with her. I wanted to be honest with him. But how could I be both? I couldn't. So for the first time in my entire life, I answered Lucado. I pronounced the name Lucado. May my ancestors have mercy on me. But the moment was not without its redeeming value. The situation provides a glimpse, just a tiny glimpse, into the character of God, because on an infinitely grander scale, God faces with humankind what I faced with the woman. How can he be both just and kind? How can he dispense truth and mercy? How can he redeem the sinner without endorsing the sin? Can a holy God overlook our mistakes? Can a kind God punish our rebellions? Now, from our perspective, there are really only two equally unappealing solutions. But from his perspective, there is a third. It's called the cross of Christ. Have you ever wondered why the cross of Christ is the symbol of our faith? Well, to find the answer, look no farther than the cross itself. Its design could not be simpler. One beam horizontal, the other vertical. One reaches out, just like God's love, and the other reaches up, reaches high, as does God's holiness. One represents the width of his love, the other represents the height of his perfection. The cross is the intersection between the affection and the perfection of God, where God forgave his children without lowering his standards. Now, how could he do this? Well, in a sentence, God put our sin on his Son and punished it there. Envision the moment. God on his throne, you on the earth, and between you and God, suspended between heaven and earth, is Christ. Christ on his cross. And your sins have been placed on Jesus. And God, who punishes sin, releases his rightful wrath on your mistakes. And Jesus receives the blow. He receives the punishment. And since Christ is between you and God, you do not. The sin is punished, but you are safe. Safe in the shadow of the cross. This is what God did. But why? Why would he do it? Some moral duty, some heavenly obligation, some paternal requirement? No, God answers to no one. He is required to do nothing. Besides, consider what he did. He gave his son, his one and only son. Would you do that? Would you offer the life of your child for someone else? I'll go on record as saying I wouldn't. There are those, I think, for whom I would give my life, but ask me to make a list of those for whom I would kill one of my daughters. That sheet's going to be blank. I don't need a pencil. The list has no names. But God's list contains the name of every person who has ever lived. For this is the scope of his love. And this is the reason for the cross. He loves the world. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. John 3:16. As boldly as the center beam of the cross proclaims God's holiness, the crossbeam of the cross declares his love. And oh, how wide his love reaches. Are you not glad that the verse does not read, for God so loved the rich, or God so loved the famous, or for God so loved the thin? It doesn't. Nor does it state, for God so loved the Europeans, or Africans, or the sober, or successful, or the young, or the old. No. When we read John 3:16, we simply and happily read, for God so loved the world. So how wide is God's love? Praise to his name. It is wide enough for the whole world. Are you included in the world? Then you are included in God's love. But isn't there a limit? Surely there has to be an end to this love, right? You'd sure think so. But you know, David the adulterer never found it. Paul the murderer never found it. Peter the liar never found it. I mean, when it came to life, they hit rock bottom. But when it came to God's love, they never did. They, like you, like me, found their names on God's list of love. And you can be certain that the one who put the name there knows how to pronounce it. My dear friend, would you receive God's love for you today? Would you receive it? Again, so much has been taken from you over the last weeks and months. This is the time to receive his love. Receive it. Let him forgive you. Let him love you. Let him accept you. For he is willing and happy to do all three. Have a great day.